What's going on? Welcome, welcome. All right, happy Tuesday, everybody. It's time for me to show you guys how to draw something new, and I'm really actually super excited about this one. I went on such a beautiful disc golf excursion not too long ago, where I got to play, Zilker Park. Actually, no, this was up in Pflugerville where I saw this tree, and it was a beautiful sunny day, but I wasn't wearing sunblock. And as I was walking around, I started cooking. And the sun was out. It was a beautiful day. There was lots of clouds. It was right after the storms that we had here in Austin. We had a big thunderstorm, but then the next day was just so gorgeous. Anyway, I'm walking through this disc golf course, and it's relatively flat. It's built into a neighborhood. Great development, by the way. I really appreciate that when I see good park development. And that's something that I can say as an older person too, now that I've experienced parks. But that being said, I was out there under the sun and it was just beating me down. It was so hot. But I would every once in a while get little pockets of respite, little pockets of somewhere cool and not it didn't hurt for me to stand underneath it for a while. It was the shade of a tree. And so I actually saw some really beautiful trees that day and thought, you know what? I've wanted to think about teaching everybody on this show, on this session, how to draw a tree. And I love trees. I mean, I keep several trees as pets. I've got a desert rose. This is a cypress. I bought a peach tree that I was going to turn into a bonsai, but the pot that I bought was way too small. So shame on me for thinking that I can read measurements correctly. My bad. So nonetheless, it's still in its original form, and I haven't cut it down and I haven't shaped it. So I missed the season for me to do that, and I've got to wait till next spring, which should be all right. Anyway, I love trees. I love trees. I surround myself with trees. I think they're beautiful. Drawing trees is a lot of fun. If you have had the experience where you go sit out in a park with a sketchbook and pencil, paper, whatever you like to do, color pencil, watercolors, if you want to do that, that's fine. And just look at the exciting line work that you see in trees, and you get all these wonderful shapes and zigzags. And, because of that, there's like no real wrong way to draw a tree. Right? You can draw a tree just about any way that you want. But I'm going to show you guys how to draw Quickleaf. I named this tree Quickleaf several years ago. I think I've had him for about 2 years, and he was about 5, or it was about 5 when I acquired him. Ginseng ficus. I've currently got him styled as a bonsai, bending the branches down, giving them that nice apple kind of round top shape there. So Quickleaf is going to serve as my model for today. I'm going to draw a lot of reference from the shapes that I'm seeing and some of the textures that I'm seeing. But again, the wonderful thing about drawing trees is you can draw them however you like. But there are some certain principles that I want to make sure that we cover today for today's lesson. So we're going to go over our tools for success, what help us stay in the drawing flow zone. That's one of my favorite parts about drawing, is after you get into it for a while, you just kind of flow a little bit. So I've got some pencils ranging from darkest at 6B. I've got 4B, which is a little less dark, 2B, which is less dark. It's your normal yellow pencil that you get at school, and then a 2H, which is a little bit softer. I probably won't use the 2H too much just because it's difficult to see on the cameras because it is so light. I want to make sure I've got a pencil sharpener because these things will wear down. I've got my shave cup here so I can trim to my heart's content. I've got a regular rubber eraser, and I've got a kneaded eraser for detail, which allows me to get real specific. So hope you're comfortable. Hope you got a sketchbook or a pencil. I've got several different chats open, so if you want to drop me a line, let me know that you're here. Great. I'd love to see you. Otherwise, let's kind of get into what we're going to get into today. Cool. All right. So before I actually get into drawing Quickleaf, I'm going to actually not think about him for a while. I'm going to talk about shapes, and I'm going to talk about marks. So I think the average way that people like to think about trees is that they're cylinders, right? And we've covered cylinders in this class before, but essentially a cylinder is a vertical circle stack, right? Kind of like that. And that's true. At their core fundamental shape design, trees are essentially cylinders. Now, you might want to enhance that and say parts of them are triangular. And as you get into the root structure, as they come out, they are more triangular going down into the ground, right? So I might want to be more like that. But nonetheless, if I'm thinking about the simple, most basic shape, it's a cylinder. I'm reiterating this a couple of ways, for a couple of reasons, because cylinders are three-dimensional objects. And when I'm drawing, depending on how I want to render my drawing, I want to make sure that the shapes, the light, the way that the light is interacting with the drawing, that it's all staying pretty consistent. So as we've discussed before, we've got the 6 stages of light, where essentially light is going to hit this cylinder, and it's going to be my hot spot where it just doesn't get any darker than that. Now in the drawing class, I'm obviously highlighting where the dark is. I wouldn't actually do this in a drawing, but again, we're talking about the 6 stages of light. So I've got highlight, light, and it can be as thick or as thin as you want, shadow, core shadow, shadow again next to reflected light, which is that last little edge, and then you've got cast shadow. So this tree, generally going to have leaves and things. Notice I'm just making real sporadic kind of notes here on the ground. And it looks like, light shining through the leaves a little bit, and that's kind of cool. You can just do as many or as little as you want. Depends on you, which one your style to be. But yeah, so cylinder, light. Light, so highlight, light, shadow, core shadow, a little bit of shadow again, reflected light, and then your cast shadow. And that's pretty much it, right? Except for now we're thinking about the fact that a tree is really an organic shape. It's not a perfect cylinder. So there's going to be some contortion in terms of how the different shapes are that we see from the tree. So some trees are like straight up and down. They're real tall. They'll go all the way up, and you'll start to get branches up here and everything. And that's cool. You kind of see, when I look at trees, and you think about the way the trees are when they interact with the ground, trees have the same kind of branch system up high as they do down low underneath the ground. It's kind of like it's like a barbell reaching out into the ground and into the air for sunlight and carbon dioxide. So anyway, so you're going to have different shapes. You're going to have bent trees like that are more bent over. You're going to have things that lean with age. A lot of people have this temptation to draw trees with all the branches are excited. They're happy to be alive. Everything is nice and alert. And really, when you see older trees, you start to see the weight of years on these plants, and it's really quite spectacular to behold. Notice I'm kind of freestyling a tree. It's just lovely. I mean, you can just get in here and start to play a little bit. I'm kind of getting away with it. Yeah, so most people like to draw their trees like upright, and it's like, oh yay, happy, happy. And not to say that that's not true, but that's typically more of a young tree. And young trees are cool too. Bonsai, this particular tree that I'm drawing, this ginseng ficus, Bonsai is an ancient tree styling art. It goes back several thousand years, where you basically take a tree and you put it into a pot. That's what bonsai means, pot tree in Japanese, translated to English. Basically, what you're trying to do is recreate an old tree in miniature form. So you get these more downward type lines in those trees because, like I said, they're carrying the weight of ages. So you can actually wind up, when you're drawing these trees, get these really beautiful downward sloping lines. Obviously, they're rising, but notice that I'm, basically pulling all the lines down as I'm going through this. I'm being real loose, doesn't matter, That's one of my most favorite ways to draw trees when I draw trees, is having it shoot up and then start to age back down into the ground. Now you can also start to add earth lines and things like that, make it look like it's coming out of the earth. You can, I've turned mine to the side, and I'm really just kind of scumbling this earth to make it look like it exists, right? Just giving it some substance. That's nice. And, just kind of doing that. Thinking about my light. Now, trees have some pretty interesting qualities. Trees have bark. And bark is a lovely texturing device. This might sound like I'm losing it, but you can go and just study some tree bark, and you'll just see some absolutely beautiful designs. Some tree barks are like real laced looking, where you've got these like pieces that are coming off, and it's just like scales almost. Some tree bark is very smooth, so you don't get a lot of texture. Some trees have like little pock marks throughout them, and so you can really have fun when you're drawing trees. You can add a ton of texture to your trees and do things like that. You can also do things like kill branches, right? So that's another thing that you see in older trees, where you've got, growth that has happened, and then it kind of falls and breaks off, right? And that's kind of cool. So trees are just an absolutely wonderful thing to draw. A lot of scenes happen under trees. If you want to tell a story, if you're using your art to tell stories, trees are a wonderful setting because you can be so wonderfully inventive with them as your background. So, all right, I've talked a little bit about the cylinder and the cylinder idea of what it is that you're doing. Now, and I've talked a little bit about texture. Now I want to talk about actually putting these two things together, right? Because it's going to be somewhat difficult to manage, like, okay, what comes first? The tortoise or the hare? Do I put the light down first, or do I put the texture down first? Should I do both at the same time? And the answer is yes. You can do whichever way you want it to be, because this is your drawing. And the way that you make certain marks, that's going to be the story and the history of the art. That's one of the things that I think we lose with photography. And not to say that photography is bad. There's wonderful photography out there. But, you're taking a picture of something. Yes, you're using light, you're using angling, glass. I'm not trying to diminish the technical beauty of good photography. I totally appreciate it. But I'm saying, like, the process is point and click. Excuse my ignorance, photographers. If you want to fight about it, let's go. But with art, or with this kind of art, my opinion is that you can approach it in every angle that you want. My preference is to do the lighting first, and then on the shadows, build the texture. But some people like to do the shadows after. They'll do the texture first and then start to build on top of that. It's kind of 6 of 1, in my opinion. Or if you're one of those photorealistic drawers, I'm not a photorealistic drawer. I use realism, but I have a more cartoony style, which means that I tend to have, dynamic lines. I've got lines that change weight in my drawings a lot. I won't just have, you know, a straight to the point line, a clean line like that. You know, if I was doing a tattoo, yeah, I would want something that is clean and even so that I don't have bleed marks. But even if I'm, you know, even if I'm drawing something on paper, like I was a bad tattoo artist. I tried. Um, my hand just likes to be a little bit looser than what it needs to be for good tattoos. And, you know, oh well, oh well. So, all right, I'm going to show you how to draw a tree. I've shown you how to draw these trees because you can draw trees from your imagination. But I'm going to show you how to draw Quickleaf here. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull him back on the stage and say, man, isn't that a good looking tree? Thank you. Thank you. I like this tree. It's been a real easy tree to learn with. I've got accidentally, I guess I overwatered my black pine and I killed the one sapling that came up, which breaks my heart. I'm sad about it because, you know, I really want this to be, I want to be successful with my trees. But I started 5 little Japanese maple the same day, but they were going through a process that's called scarification. And what that means is certain trees fall and then they freeze. And the freeze signal or the chill signal is what causes the plant's genetic code to go into activation. So these Japanese maple are that way. So I put them in the refrigerator for 5 weeks, changed out their paper towels to keep them not from molding. That's what the instructions said. They didn't have any mold on them, but you know, I washed them, keep them clean. And I planted them, I guess this was last weekend. Planted them last weekend. So I should start to see if they take, I should start to see saplings in about 5 weeks. So, you know, if you're thinking about, you know, wanting an awesome gift, I need some pots, guys. I need some pots for these trees to live in when they grow up. You know, it's kind of like giving a teenager a car. You know, once a kid hits 16, that thing needs to get around. Okay. All right. So let's draw Quickleaf. So Quickleaf is interesting. He's a ginseng. And I don't know why I've masculinized him. He's like my tree son. But, you know, Quickleaf and I, we hang out. Beam is who he was named after, who's a Lord of the Rings character. I just like the name. And these things grow fast. All right, so the first thing that I'm seeing with Quickleaf is, let's talk about the meta shapes, the big shapes. I'm seeing, first of all, a big arch here. Like that's the top, that's the canopy of the tree. And I'm seeing, you know, kind of big circles of shapes, you know, of clusters, right? And I'm just kind of mapping where these are so that I can start to group these things together later on. And I'm just doing that. Okay, cool. And I'm seeing kind of this inward motion of the lines. Now, I'm not being as maybe cautious as I would be if I was trying to be realistic. But you know what? I'm not trying to be realistic. I'm trying to be artistic because I can do that. Okay. Now, this is the weird thing about ginseng. These are tropical trees. They have something that's called an air root, which means that roots will spring out from other places outside of just the like normal where people think roots belong, which is on the bottom. It will not actually do that. Well, it will. It has that. Don't get me wrong. But it springs out roots all over the place. So if you were to actually look close on Quickleaf, you would see that there's all kinds of little lines and like feelers out, and those are actually his roots growing out, and they make contact with the ground. There's a style of bonsai that you can do called root over rock, and very pretty. Looks just like it sounds. Where you can, you know, basically like put a rock under a tree and lift it, and it looks like this tree has been growing on this ancient rock. Man, such a cool effect. Okay, so while I'm talking, I'm drawing these air roots that I'm seeing as I'm looking at this guy. I've got a number 4B soft pencil, and I've got it turned on the side so I don't like try to put too much tone down. I don't want to like overtone this thing. Okay. And this is just going to represent, he's actually got a big bowl of a pot. I got this at Austin's, what is it? It's a succulent farm. And I saw this and I was just like, man, I want to buy a pot from them. I didn't want to buy, they had, no offense guys, they had kind of shitty generic bonsai pots, or at least I didn't find any that I liked. Let me put it that way. I didn't find any that I liked, that I was willing to part money with. But I did find this one and I thought it was pretty cool looking. So I bought it. Even though it's not a typical bonsai pot, I don't care. It's a tree in a pot, man. It's still a bonsai. Okay, boop, 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 boop. There we go. I'm just having fun with the lines. Doesn't matter. Okay, so one thing about ginseng, though, is that they're kind of a smooth textured tree. So I've got to kind of think about how am I going to create texture on this thing without having a lot of like gnarly things. Well, I'm just going to look. I mean, there's all sorts of things. So I can start to hit designs. I can start to, he's got all these little fine little cuts, not cuts, but like little pocks, little marks on the surface level where I can start to go around and start adding and building up texture. That's getting a little ahead of myself. Let me not get too into that because I know where I can go with that, which is down a rabbit hole. So now I'm going to start drawing the branches, and notice I'm being real loose with my lines. Loose. Being loose with my lines. But here's the other thing that I kind of want to think about. One thing that I see with tree drawings that doesn't necessarily irk me, because, you know, as long as it's a good drawing, it can be a good drawing. One thing that I see is like a tendency for people to like want to do these like super clean, super like beautiful straight lines. And I'm just like, that's not really what a tree does. You know, like a tree is this wonderful collection of organic shapes. Now, and you want to capture that, you know. So Quickleaf has these branches that are here, and then they kind of grow out here. And yeah, overall, they're going to arch. But they kind of grow together. So notice I'm kind of using a dual strategy here. I'm kind of going, I'm setting down the line that I see so that I can do that part smooth, and I'm going back, and now I'm going to start texturing. And I'm really kind of scribbling when I'm making the marks that I'm making. I'm not making smooth two lines. I'm kind of scribbling, and so that way the lines that I'm laying down have a texture of themselves. It makes the drawing more interesting. And because I do it the first time that I lay down marks, it reads as much more intentional as well. Even if I'm like a little off, I'm not exactly like reading the subject right, you know, from a sight drawing perspective. I don't really care. This is actually bigger. I don't want to, well, I guess I have to. Oh, well. You got to draw what you see, folks. Sometimes you just got to draw what you see. It means you got to kill your darlings. The drawing will be better for it. It's just hard. It's just hard. All right, so you got these. And so I'm just getting in here, drawing these branches. Trying to do as well as I can. I know I'm talking about drawing what you see, but at the same point, y'all don't know what I see. Doesn't matter. I'm slowly exploring all the way up with my lines. Slowly exploring. I'm doing more diamond shape with my leaves, guys. I could probably do a whole class on drawing leaves. Probably should. Maybe that's what I'll do next week. Just so, you know, I can draw some leaves. That sounds fun to me, actually. I see what I did. All right. So sometimes the temptation is to actually draw the outline of the object. Just draw the object. Doesn't matter. Even if I've got to go back in here and lighten it up, which I will, you wind up with more immediacy. And again, I've talked about that before. There's a pleasantness to a drawing that has immediacy. No. Yeah, all right, that's coming around. And notice I'm just kind of building out around the same time as everything else. So, like I talked about, there's this kind of cluster of leaves over here. I like this. This is fun. This is a challenge. All these little leaves. I don't normally like to draw this kind of stuff because I'm more of a big picture guy. And I realize that is, while that is a strength, you gotta work on your weak parts too. And if as an artist I move away from something, I can observe that. I can watch, why am I moving away from this particular thing? But if I also think that, there's a character issue behind it, it's just because I'm lazy, I don't want to go through and draw all these leaves. Well, that ain't any good either, So use your hobbies to defeat your moral failings, ethical. I don't know what they are. Just you want to get something done, do it. And if you run away from something that you're doing for pleasure like this, you'll just reinforce that circuit. Oops. There's your minute philosophy for all y'all who are watching. Okay, I need to go back to my side drawing. This is over here. I'm moving too much. Yeah, I'm moving too much. These things are getting out of whack. Yeah. I don't know how that happens. It just happens, man. Yeah, so notice I'm just going different ways. These leaves kind of have a tendency to bow out toward the end. Kind of a useful observation. Drawing this thing like a cubist. Yep. I'm gonna give this thing a haircut next time I do this. Don't have to draw so many leaves. Oh, where am I? This can happen. You can get lost in your drawing. Where am I? Here. That's fine. Best part is, this is a sketch. So I can mess up all I need to. branch coming here. I'm just gonna kill that leaf right now so I can think. And I got a branch coming out of here. And it's going up here like that. A little notch here. And that's coming out here. Yeah, it's coming right along. How about that? Okay. All right, so I'm going to get to my next part of this lesson just so that I can get into my time management piece. So let's start talking about shading and texturing. So I know that I'm giving up on the leaves, and I'll come back and I'll finish this. Probably never. But I do want to talk about light and the way that light is working on this. So I do have some dimensionality here. So what I'm going to do is start building that dimensionality up with some of my material here. So first I'm going to do just kind of some fine marks, adding some of this initial shadow that I'm seeing. And one of the things that I can do is I can squint and I can look at this thing. I can see just how dark all the darks really are. All right, so if I'm looking, there's really a lot of darkness in this tree. Mhm. Now, here's a little thing you can do. As you're toning, you can start to contour the object with your lines. You'll get some better quality shadows out of that because you'll start to see the marks fall over the shape. So that kind of becomes pleasing for the eye. And eye goes like a queen. So right there. Okay. Now, this thing has got all sorts of bulbousness to it. Right, so it's got different round things that are projecting out, some surface texture things. It's got, it's uneven. It's not quite a cylinder, so it's got like things pushing out a little bit more toward the front, things kind of going back a little bit more toward the back. So it's got all these different things that are going on. It's got little chopped off parts, little stems that went nowhere, got killed probably by me or somebody like me, or had the tree before me. Yeah, so this part takes a while. You can spend a good amount of time toning and getting the tone brought to where it needs to be. There's a couple of different ways to think about tone, though, and the roundness. Because I'm drawing an irregular object like a tree, I have to treat each separate piece as its own light vehicle or its own dark vehicle. Meaning like, okay, so I'm doing my shadows here on this tree, and notice I'm kind of moving it around a little bit. That's to give it a little bit of dynamics. But now I'm going to treat this object on top of it kind of the same and give it its own sense of light and darks. And then maybe I can put the darks and lights in there together. That's okay. I can absolutely do that. I'll give it a little bit more believability on a surface side. As I go around, I want to start adding all these different interesting things, all this different interesting texture. Goobed up there. I need one of those sticks. Shouldn't have stumbled that. Got them up here. Erasers here. Tools for success. All right. All right. All right. All right. That's a bummer. Oh, I see. I see. That's why I did that. No. Okay. Do 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 do. Okay. Aha. All right. So like I'm saying, I've got to treat each of these objects like they're their own light and shadow vehicle. So just like I'm kind of going around, I'm wrapping the light around the subject, around the structure. I'm using the directionality of my marks to give me some of that believability of where the light is rolling over. So I've turned my pencil over. I'm real light. I'm not adding a lot of pressure. I'm real light. I'm going down and going down. Now what I'm going to start doing is adding just a little bit of contour so you can see kind of the push-pull of the soil underneath. I don't want to just texture the soil as, just black, right? Because it's not actually black. There's a lot of light information going in there too. I can even get in here and lay down some preliminary tone, establish that it's a darker area, but also throw in these little pox, these little fertilizer pieces that are in here. Give me some interesting texture to look at. It's all about texture, all about texture. I want to give the eye something really nice to enjoy. It takes a while. I'm trying to be fast and abbreviated. Because I know you're on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook and you got all kinds of things to look at. too much in a hurry. Of course, I am too. So here I am, tree calling the pot black. Wait, pot, kettle, whatever. You know what I'm saying. And that's just going around, scribbling. Mm-hmm. And tools for success time. Let's do show. All this part I'm making up. Doesn't matter. Now, here's something cool. We've touched on it, but we haven't like done it a lot because a lot of our time together, try to show and demonstrate techniques real time, and that way you've got some knowledge and some things that you can practice at home. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. You can actually leave me a comment right now if you're watching. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions about what I'm doing, any of the techniques that I'm using, please, by all means, let me know where it's at. What can I do for you? This is part entertainment, part education. So if you want to know about what I'm doing, ask away. I used to get so specific in college. Maybe I should be more specific like that. Anyway. All right. So when I look at that and I look at my drawing, I see that there are some areas that need to get a little bit darker. So I need to just go ahead and add a little bit more tone. But the other thing is you want to make sure that your shapes are starting to be more consistent and that your darks are hitting the edges where they need to hit. Nothing breaks an illusion like empty space in the wrong place. All right? If the lights and shadows aren't in agreement, you can actually have a successful drawing where that happens, but it has to be for a good reason. Like if there's an outside light that's on or something that's causing light to bounce in at the object from a different angle, well, then now you've got a compelling case. But if it's because you were lazy and you didn't draw the thing right, well, that's not good so much. It's one of those air roots. Might be easier if I needed eraser. So you do have to be careful. Once you start erasing, you're going to change the texture on the paper. So what I mean by that is the way that this is reading is now going to as I smooth and start to work the eraser into where the dark was, that eraser is going to pick up some of that and it's going to knock off some of the tooth of the paper. Anyway. Since that goes to the bottom. Okay. Let's see, what else? What else can I go over in this drawing of trees? So everything basically has its own light agreement. Let me talk a little bit about reflected light on these leaves. Oh, yeah. I got distracted. Okay. So, shadows, cast shadows. This is fun. Nothing says tree more than cast shadows, I think. So what I'm going to do is just draw some of the shapes that I see in the shadows. It's not that many, but it's enough. It's enough to be compelling. If I had some vine charcoal would do this job really easy for me. I wanted to go that far. I didn't really have to. I don't think. Unless I was drawing. All right, so there's that. Okay, guys. Well, that's how I drew a little bit of Quickleaf for you tonight. Thanks for swinging by. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment if you have a favorite kind of tree that I can draw for you. That'll be fun. Come back Thursday. I'm going to freestyle a little bit more on this tree idea and have some fun. So thank you guys so much for swinging by, and I will see you guys next time. All right, take care.